A Warning in Red, the story of a railway mystery by Victor L. Whitechurch and E. Conway. Yes, said the colonel as he lit another cohort. Many a man, when he is in action, is simply mad for the time being and fights like a demon because he sees red. Sees red, I asked, with a start. Don't you know what I mean? No. Oh, it's a curious psychological problem that I've experienced myself. I was leading a cavalry charge at Jumpur when suddenly the enemy and the country and everything seemed to fade away into a blood-red mist that blinded me with color. I could see nothing else. And then the mad desire came upon me to slash and slay. They told me afterwards that I behaved like a fury, and I can believe it, for I've seen many a man in the same condition. It only comes in battle, I believe, and that's the only time you can see red. Are you sure? Yes, but what's the matter, Forbes? You look completely startled. It's nothing. Only a fanciful present I had when I arrived this evening, and you put me in mind. What? You don't mean to say you saw red? Asked the colonel with a laugh. Not in your sense of the word, Colonel, and you'll only laugh at me if I tell you. It's a mere fancy, that's all. Well, drown your fancies in whiskey and soda, then we'll get a good night's rest after your journey. That's the best thing for you, Forbes. But if you'd like to tell me what you're upset about, I won't laugh at you. So in the end, I told him about the strange effect I'd experienced lighting at the station. I'd come down from town to spend a couple of days with Colonel Ward at Manningford. Although I had known him for many years and had seen him often at his club, it was the first time I'd ever been to stay at his country house. He expected me to be by a late train, but judgment being given in a case for which I was professionally engaged as a solicitor, rather earlier than I had expected. I was able to get away from town in the afternoon and reached Manningford Station about 6 o'clock. I had not thought it worth the while to wire, and I had determined to take a trap if it was far to walk and surprise him. Manningford was a tiny little country station, and I was the only passenger who alighted, and one solitary official who seemed to combine the offices of station master, porter, and ticket collector met me on the platform. "Ticket, please," he said gruffly. I gave him my ticket. As I did so, the train in which I had been traveling on glided off the platform, and I caught a glimpse of the red taillights showing in the fading light. Dressing in my Gladstone bag, I was about to depart when the idea struck me that I would ask the station master for a conveyance. He had retired to his office and was standing at the ticket issuing window, which was open. He had lit the lamp inside, and the office was rather dark. "Can I get a cab anywhere?" I asked. He looked up, and he was a red-faced man with red hair. The strong light showed his color vividly. In accordance with the rules of the railway company he served, he was wearing a red tie. "No," he said rather shortly. Perhaps I was staring a little rudely at his illuminated countenance. "But," I persisted, "surely there's some conveyance to be had near, isn't there?" "You can hire a dog cart from the Star," he said. "And where is that?" "Cross the line and go out on the other side of the station, turn at the light. It's about 5 minutes' walk." Then he slammed down the window. I went on the platform once more and slowly across the line. I say slowly because the red color of my surroundings began to grow on me. The station itself was painted chocolate color of a reddish tinge. The tiles bordering the flower beds were a deep red color, enclosing in most part scarlet geraniums. Looking down the line, I caught a glimpse of the crimson rays of the setting sun reflected on the rails, and glancing in the opposite direction, I noticed that the red light on the up signals was burning brightly. It was a strange, indescribable sensation that attacked me, this predominance of a blood-red coloring, and I gave a little shiver as I walked to the inn, which was a good quarter of a mile from the station, although apparently the nearest house. A 2-mile drive brought me to the colonel's, and after his dinner I mentioned seeing red and recalled what had happened. "Well," said the Colonel Ward as he bid me good night, "well, I won't laugh at you, because I'll admit that we're none the accountable for particular brain sensations at the times. Monk, the station master, isn't exactly a beauty to look at, is he? But he's a capital official. You've been overworking yourself lately, Forbes, and you must take things easy. Good night, old chap. Pleasant dreams. I hope your red sensation is not the preliminary of a nightmare. The next morning, as I was sitting in breakfast, the servant burst into the room with a very frightened expression, and told the colonel that a man was wanting to see him at once. He was absent for a quarter of an hour, and when he returned in great agitations. "Good heavens!" he exclaimed. "My poor friend Godfrey Athner has been murdered, killed on the lane coming down from town last night. Your blood-red impression had something to it, perhaps, Forbes." "Tell me about it, Colonel." "I will. It upset me dreadfully. Poor Aunt Struthers was my nearest neighbor, living about a mile off that big white house you noticed between the station and my place. We were the greatest of friends, so though he was a peculiar man, we got on thoroughly. Poor fellow is to have to meet you for dinner here tonight." How did it happen?" "Well, they tell me his body was discovered by the side of the line near Barton, about midway between London and Manningford. A plate layer found it early this morning. There were marks of a struggle and a couple of knife stabs, but he seems to have been attacked and killed in the train, and then thrown out." "Any idea if the motive to the crime?" I asked. "Unfortunately, yes," said the colonel. "Poor Anstruters was a man of most eccentric habits, and one of his fads that he would bank nowhere but the Bank of England, and that he would pay nobody by cheque. He also settled all his accounts once a quarter day, and the tradesman who asked for his earlier settlement, or the servant or labourer who demanded monthly or weekly wages, was sure to be dismissed by him. Regularly, every quarter, he went up to London and drew several £100 in gold out of the Bank of England, bringing it back in an ordinary brief bag. I often warned him that this was very doing of a foolish thing, but he only laughed at me. Yesterday he went up to town for this purpose. His servants thought that he had not returned last evening by his usual time, which arrives at 10:15 p.m. He was staying at the night in town. But evidently some blackguard got hold of his movements. Oh, poor old Anstruthers." "Has anything been done yet?" I asked. "I hardly know," said the colonel. "I think the nearest relations are abroad. At all events, I'm the greatest friend he had, and I'm going to take the matter up. I shall go to Barton by the next train." "I'll come with you," I said. "That's very kind of you, Forbes. Your assistance will be most valuable, for I know your hobby, railways. It might help us." We finished our breakfast quickly, so that the only stops between London and Manningford were Mudbridge and Barton. The body, so the colonel heard, had been found 2 miles from London side of Barton. The red-faced station master was at his office when we arrived at the station. "Sad job this, Mr. Monk," said the colonel. "Terrible, sir. It regularly upset me when the down train brought the news this morning." "Poor Mr. Anstruthers. I knew him well, sir. I'd seen him go up in the morning and wondered why he didn't come back for the 10:15 as usual. Are you going up by the train?" "Yes, we're going to Barton to inquire into this awful affair. First 2 returns, please." The station master reached into his rack for the tickets. Now, as often happens in small country stations where the supply of tickets at various stations on the line is limited and becomes exhausted, he did a very common thing. Selecting 2 blank tickets, he dipped the pen in the ink and wrote on their respective halves, Manningford to Barton, Barton to Manningford. And then the fare. 7/6 $. Then he passed them through the window, and I took them up. He had written names in red ink. "I hope they'll catch the wretches, sir," said the station master a few minutes afterwards, and he opened their carriage for the door for us. Arrived at Barton, we took a trap and drove to the scene of the tragedy. The body, we were told, had been removed to an inn close by the railway, but at my request we went first to the line, as I was anxious to see the exact spot where Mr. Anstruthers had been thrown out of the train. I found a local policeman and 2 plate layers at the place, which wasn't a cutting. One of the latter told us that he was the man who discovered the body. "It was lying just here, gentlemen," he said, pointing at the 6-foot way between 2 lines of metal. "Of course, he was dead when you found him?" I asked. "Yes, sir. But it's my opinion he wasn't altogether dead when they threw him out. Why? Because he seemed to have been moved afterwards. One of his arms was just resting on the down rail. Well? Well, sir, he couldn't have fallen like that in the first place because the wheels of the train would have cut off his arm. Stop a minute, I said. What time did you find him here? Between 3 and 4 this morning, sir. And he was thrown out about 9:30 the night before. Yes, sir. Was that train the last one down? Last passenger train, sir. Was there a down goods train after that? Yes, sir, between 1:30 and 2. Ah, then, why didn't that train crush his arm? The question staggered the plate leader, and the policeman, too. They evidently hadn't thought of this. I suppose he must have been alive when the train got past and moved over afterwards, said the plate leader presently, and the policeman entered a note to that effect in his pocketbook. What are you driving at? Said the colonel. Never mind yet, I answered. Then turning to the plate leader again, I said, he was stabbed, wasn't he? Yes, sir. Where? In the chest. Any bloodstains? Yes, sir. He was wearing a white waistcoat, and he was quite red when I turned him over. He was lying on his back, then? Yes, sir. Well, were the blood marks on the stones here? Have you cleared them up? There weren't none, said the man. Strange, I muttered to myself when I left the spot. He'd make a good detective, Forbes, said the colonel. Not a bit of it, I replied. It's simply because there's a mystery connected with my hobby, railways. That's what makes me a little extra sharp. A mystery? Said the colonel. Yes, I replied. More than you think. But now, let's see this poor fellow. Mr. Anstruthers was lying on a bed in the inn, just as they had found him. The neighboring police inspector was there, and was imposing in importance. The colonel gave his card, and we were allowed to see the body. It was a gruesome sight. My friend turned away to ask some questions of the inspector. I looked at the dead man carefully. There were signs of a struggle. His clothes were torn, and one of his hands was tightly clenched. And then I saw what apparently the wily police had undiscovered. A shred of paper clasped in his hand. Without exciting the inspector's attention, I wrestled the fingers open and drew from them the tiny scrap of torn film, evidently clutched by a dying hand. It bore the following wording. Old on. Such a tiny scrap, an insignificant thing to go upon, but I slipped it into my pocketbook nevertheless. Holmes, said the colonel. I can't stand by this any longer. Well, Inspector, hope you will get the villain. We're on the tracks, said the officer sagaciously. They've got out of Barton, but that's about it. We'll have him yet. You want to see anything else, Forbes? Yes, I should like to see the doctor who examined the body. It's Dr. Moore, said the policeman. He lives in Barton. So we called on Dr. Moore on our way to the station. He declared that he had seen poor Anstruthers at 6 o'clock in the morning, and was positively certain that he must have been dead 7 or 8 hours. The mystery was thickening. Passing on to the platform at Barton, we had to show our tickets. As I took mine back, I gazed at the listless sort of way, and suddenly gave a start. The last 3 letters of Manningford, where had I seen them? That particular long O, that curiously tailed deep. Ah, I remembered. Hastily I drew that scrap of paper from my pocketbook and compared it with the ticket. The ord was the same handwriting. It was part of the words Manningford Station. In a moment the clue flashed across my mind, and I searched for the porter. Is there any official word on the station with whom I can have a word? It's about an urgent matter. Yes, sir, Mr. Smart, the district superintendent here. He came down about the murder. You'll find him in the station master's office. Come with me, Colonel. I turned, crying to the office. Hastily I introduced myself to Mr. Smart, telling him my errand was connected with the murder. Tell me, I asked, Is there a train from Manningford to London after 10:15? Only a goods, he said. Exactly. What time does it leave Manningford? Uh, about midnight. And Barton. It stops there for shunting. Generally starts about 1:45 a.m. Mr. Smart, can you lay your hand on the men who worked the train last night? He consulted some return sheets. Driver Power and Fireman Horsley, he murmured. They're on the Slinford branch today. They don't often run on the main line. And Brakesman Sutton. He works the good backs of the Port Haven today. He'll arrive here in half an hour. Does he always work the mainline trains? Oh, for several months he has. Then he's a man, Mr. Smart. If it's of utmost importance that you could wire Port Haven and have him closely watched, I'll explain presently. The district superintendent hastily scribbled out a line on an official telegraph form and rushed it out. When he returned, I said, Have you got any company detectives at hand? Oh, yes, two. Please bring them. Can come along. My dear fellow, said the colonel, who had been patiently silent up to this point. What does it mean? Yes, said the superintendent. In the fog. I hear a down train coming in, I cried. We must return to Manningford. Quick, sir. I'll explain everything on the train. In a few minutes, the colonel and the superintendent and two detectives and myself were on the train bound for Manningford. Now, sir, I replied. Well, I replied, I'm going to arrest the murderers, and one of them, I think, at all events. And who's that? Monk, the station master at Manningford, I replied. Monk? Impossible. Why, the murder 40 years... No, I replied. It occurred in Manningford station last night shortly at 10:15. Listen, poor Anthrothers came down from train and got out of the train, and was done to death by the station master, who was alone at the station for the sake of the money. In the struggle, he murdered the man and clutched the letter that Monk had written and is probably carrying in his breast pocket. This scrap of it I found in the hand this morning. Look, it's in Monk's handwriting. I compared it to the ticket. But how about the body being found here and where it was? It was taken there afterwards, probably Stratton's brake fan, and thrown out. This would account for the two facts. First, that no blood was found in the permanent way, although Anthrothers had bled, and secondly, that his arm was laying down on the rail. The down good had passed before it had thrown up the good brake man. That's my theory. Here, we're at Manningford, and the least you can do is arrest the station master for suspicion. The latter was on the platform when we arrived. I noticed he gave a start when he saw so many of us get off the train. The superintendent went up to him. Mr. Monk, he said, a very painful duty brings us here. These two gentlemen are members of our police force, and they will have to detain you on suspicion. Oh, what? Cried Monk, his face growing paler. Of participation in the murder of Mr. Anthrothers last night. But he was killed on the train, said the station master. That remains to be proved. At all events, we are going to have to detain you and search your house. I won't submit to it, said the man, and he subsided when a pair of handcuffs were slipped on his wrists. Then we repaired to his little house, just across the road. Again he proved turbulent, but it was no use. With skeleton keys, one of the detectives opened the box in his bedroom. Ah, he exclaimed as he drew out the heavy bag. This seems rather heavy. No wonder. It's full of money. That's Anthrothers' bag, exclaimed the colonel. The wretched man saw the game was up. But wretch he was, he exclaimed. It's not me, it's Sutton, the brakesman, helping the train good. He had as much to do with it as I did. He took the body away. He got rid of the lot of gold. All right, said the superintendent. After seeing him, you have to thank this gentleman, pointing to myself, for unraveling the mystery. Curse you, said the station master at me. And your little dog, too. Sutton turned against Monk, and between the two of them the whole story came out. Monk's accounts were shorts, and he owed money all around. The usual story, racing. He had half planned to murder Anthrothers several times, and the last opportunity presented itself. He was the only passenger alight that night, and Monk noticed that the guard had not observed him, so he asked him to step into his office for a moment under pretense of something, and then went for him. There was a struggle, but Monk was a stronger man. In the struggle, Anthrothers had grasped the bit of paper, but without the other's knowledge. When it came to the disposal of the body, Sutton was the man who did not for character, and Monk knew enough about him to ruin him if he disclosed certain cases of goods stealing. So when the goods train came along, he gave Sutton £20 and promised him another 30 to take the body in his van and pitch it out, so that people would think that Anthrothers had been murdered in the train. It was the easiest thing possible on a dark night to halt the train with the brakeman opposite Monk's office, and to slip the body in without the driver or fireman knowing anything about it. The sequel was a gallows for Monk and 15 years at Dartmoor for Sutton. "There was something uncanny after all, Forbes," said the colonel after dinner on that eventful day, "about your blood-red impression of Manningford Station and its master.